Cold War took place from 1947 to 1991 and was a period of political and military tension between the Soviet Union and the United States. Beginning during World War II, the nuclear arms race was a competition for supremacy in nuclear warfare between the United States and the Soviet Union. On October 4, 1957, Sputnik, the first artificial Earth satellite, was launched by the Soviet Union. This project was directed by a member of the Soviet Union, Sergei Korolev. Although Eisenhower and the American government as a whole were not surprised and almost dismissive of the satellite's launch, the American people were shocked and scared. This period of shock and fear is known as the Sputnik crisis. This time produced the Advanced Research Project Agency, NASA, and an increase in U.S. government spending on scientific research and education. Eisenhower enacted the National Defense Education Act during this time of panic. The bill encouraged students to go to college and study math and science. Thus, Sputnik spurred increased advancements in the sciences for the United States as well as the Soviet Union. With the launching of Sputnik 1, the space race began. The United States got involved in the space race because we were afraid of the communist Soviet Union and had to prove to the world that American capitalists had ability in sciences too. Explorer 1, the first Earth satellite of the United States, was launched on January 31, 1958. The significance of Explorer 1 was that it reassured the American people that they did in fact have the capability to compete with the Soviet Union.
The American people were scared by the Sputnik launch, noting that the communists had a way to observe them from space. So the American people decided to race for the moon, and thus the space race began. Explorer 1 was launched on January 31, 1958 at 22:48 Eastern Time, equal to February 1st, 3:08 UTC, atop the first Juno booster from LC-26 at the Cape Canaveral Missile Annex, Florida. It was the first spacecraft to detect the Van Allen radiation belt, returning data until its batteries were exhausted after nearly 4 months. It remained in orbit until 1970 and has been followed by more than 90 specific spacecraft of the Explorer.
Yuri Gagarin was a Soviet pilot. He was the first human to journey into outer space when his Vostok spacecraft completed an orbit of the Earth on April 12, 1961. He became an international celebrity and won many medals, including the Hero of the Soviet Union, the nation's highest honor. Although to this day Americans know of Neil Armstrong better than Yuri Gagarin. Gagarin reached space before any other human, and for that, he's still
Was the first American to orbit the Earth on February 20th, 1962. He went up in space during the mission Mercury's Friendship 7. He circled Earth 3 times during a flight that lasted 4 hours, 55 minutes, and 23 seconds. Glenn was a combat aviator and one of the 7 selected by NASA to work on the experimental Mercury spacecraft. He was celebrated. During the first mission, there was concern over ground indication that its heat shield had come loose, which would allow it to fail during re-entry through the atmosphere, causing his capsule to burn up. Flight controllers had Glenn modify his re-entry procedure by keeping his retro rocket back on after the shield in an attempt to keep it in place. He made his splashdown safely, and afterwards it was determined that the indicator was faulty.
Roger, capsule turning around, and I can see the booster during turnaround just a couple of 100 yards behind me. It was beautiful. Roger, understand go for at least 7 orbits. This is Friendship 7, can see clear back a big cloud pattern way back across Dorset Cape. Beautiful sight.
If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. And it is one of the great adventures of all time. And no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space. Those who came before us made certain that this country rode the first waves of the Industrial Revolution, the first waves of modern invention, and the first wave of nuclear power. And this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
Valentina Tereshkova was the first woman in space when she was selected from more than 400 applicants to pilot the Vostok 6. As only an honorary member of the Soviet Air Force, Tereshkova was also the first civilian to fly in space as well. She received at least 50 awards and to this day is celebrated as a heroine and a symbol of the strength of women. The qualifications she had to follow were that she be under 30 years of age, under 170 centimeters, 5 feet and 7 inches tall, and under 70 kilograms or 154 pounds in weight. Tereshkova was considered a particularly worthy candidate partly due to her proletarian background and because her father, tank leader Sergeant Vladimir Tereshkov, was a war hero. He died in the Finnish Winter War during World War II in the Lameti area and Finnish Karelia, and when Tereshkova was 2 years old. After her mission, she was asked how the Soviet Union could thank her for her service to the country. Tereshkova asked that the government search for and publish the location where her father was killed in action. This was done, and a monument now stands at the site of Lernaty, now on the Russian side of the border. The Apollo launch occurred on July 20th, 1969, and landed the first 2 humans on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin.
Four, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Apollo 11 was the first spaceflight that landed on the moon. Armstrong became the first to step into the lunar surface on July 21st. Armstrong spent about 2.5 hours outside the spacecraft, Aldrin slightly less, and together they collected 47.5 pounds of lunar material to return to Earth. Broadcast on live television to a worldwide audience, Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface and described the event as one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Apollo 11 effectively ended the space race and fulfilled a national goal proposed in 1961 by the late U.S. President John F. Kennedy. The space race was a major event in U.S. history. It has changed the nations in a lot of ways. It is the main reason why space technology and the system advanced to what we have currently today. We would not be living in a society like this if it wasn't for the space race. Also, the space race gave worldwide recognition to the US and the USSR. The accomplishments by both countries were mind-blowing and never before seen to the world. It is known that the United States has won the space race because they put a human on the moon to walk and investigate. However, both countries created inventions and completed accomplishments of their own, so that made the space race so great.